The Miami evening was thick with heat, the kind that sticks to your skin even after sunset. Inside the Voss family's lavish oceanfront villa, the air conditioning hummed, cooling the vast space, but the air inside crackled with something else. Elena Voss, 42, sat on the long leather couch in the entertainment room, her black hair spilling over her shoulders. The room screamed wealth. Towering glass walls framed the dark Atlantic Ocean. A crystal chandelier glittered above the marble floor, and a huge TV played an action flick with a steamy romance subplot. Next to her, Jack, her 20-year-old stepson, sprawled across the couch, one leg slung over the armrest, the remote dangling in his hand. His deep brown eyes were glued to the screen. 3 years ago, Victor, Elena's husband and Jack's father, died in a plane crash, leaving them alone in this sprawling house. Elena had buried herself in her event-planning business, orchestrating lavish parties to dodge her grief. She hadn't noticed Jack's transformation from a skinny teen to a striking young man. Until now. Jack had changed. His shoulders were broader, his muscles tight under a black t-shirt, his jaw sharp. His eyes carried a quiet confidence that unsettled her. She tried to watch the movie, but the tension between them grew, especially as the on-screen couple shared a heated kiss. Jack shifted, resting his arm along the couch, his fingers brushing near her shoulder. She felt his breath, warm with a hint of sandalwood cologne. Her pulse jumped, a mix of unease and excitement stirring inside her. "Elena," Jack said suddenly, his voice low, cutting through the quiet. She turned, breath-catching. "Yes, Jack." His gaze locked onto hers, intense. "I want to tell you something." Her heart thudded. "What is it?" "I just want to thank you," he said, his tone warm. "After Dad died, you were here for me, even though you didn't have to. You kept me from feeling lost in this place." His words struck deep, peeling back her defenses. "Of course, Jack," she said, forcing a shaky smile. "I'm glad you're here." He held her gaze. "Me too," he said slowly. "Having you here. It keeps me grounded." The space between them thick and electric. Elena clung to reason, but a thought slipped through. Jack wasn't the boy she remembered. The movie rolled on, the lovers now kissing passionately. She felt Jack's heat, his hand hovering closer, his breath grazing her hair. Inside, she was unraveling. This closeness rattled her, yet it thrilled her. A dangerous mix. Their eyes met again, and in his gaze, she saw something beyond gratitude. She blamed the movie, the late hour, but as the screen showed a rain-drenched embrace, Jack's breath grew nearer. "Elena," he whispered again. Her heart raced. "What, Jack?" He brushed her shoulder, a spark igniting. "You don't have to be alone forever," he said. She froze, his touch lingering. "Jack, don't," she murmured, barely audible. He leaned closer, breath hot on her cheek. "I see you, Elena. Really see you." His words shattered her walls. She bolted up, legs shaky. "I need to go to my room," she mumbled, escaping upstairs. But she felt his eyes follow her, a silent vow hanging in the air. Days later, the tension lingered. Jack's demeanor shifted. He spoke more at breakfast, his eyes tracking her every move. He started helping around the house, a new habit. One morning, as Elena dusted the library shelves, Jack appeared. "Let me help," he said, taking the cloth, his fingers grazing hers. She blinked, surprised. "You manage everything here alone," he said, meeting her eyes. "You need someone to step up." His words stirred something tender in her. "Thank you, Jack," she said, voice quivering. A warmth spread through her. His recognition of her solitude hit home. Then, one afternoon in the kitchen, she felt his stare as she chopped vegetables. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes tracing her hips, her back, her hair. It wasn't a stepson's look. It was a man's, bold and unapologetic. Her hand shook, the knife slipping. She hated to admit it, but she liked it. It had been years since she'd felt so seen. When he left, she rushed to the bathroom mirror. At 42, she was still stunning, slim waist, full hips toned from yoga. Her gray eyes gleamed, her dark hair sleek. She smiled, a spark reigniting. Jack had noticed. His boldness escalated. His gaze never wavered. Casual touches multiplied. Fingers brushing hers over a glass, shoulders grazing as they cleared dishes. He was testing their boundaries, and she didn't push back. One night on the balcony overlooking the ocean, The breeze tugging her hair, Jack joined her. His heat cut through the cool air. Elena, do you ever think about living for yourself? He asked, voice low like the waves. She turned, breath hitching. What do you mean? You deserve happiness, not just survival, he said, his hand brushing her elbow, sending a shiver through her. Jack, we shouldn't, she whispered, but her words faded as he stepped closer, his breath teasing her lips. I don't care about should anymore, he said. I care about you. Her heart pounded. She fled inside, locking herself in her room, but a fire had sparked within her. Jack was no longer the boy she'd raised. One night, Elena came home late from an event, exhausted. Opening the door, she stopped cold. The living room glowed with candles, roses strewn across the floor. A table set with silk napkins and crystal glasses. It was pure romance, a dream she'd forgotten. Jack stepped from the kitchen, white shirt clinging to his frame, black trousers crisp. He looked magnetic, commanding her focus. I wanted your birthday to be unforgettable, he said, a soft smile hiding the fire in his eyes. He handed her a box. Inside was an emerald green silk dress, daring, sensual, with a low back and high slit. Her breath caught. You got this for me? She asked, voice unsteady. Of course, he said. Something worthy of you. It'll make you look dangerous. His calm tone belied his hungry stare. She retreated to her room, slipping into the dress. In the mirror, she barely knew herself. The silk hugged her curves, her legs peeking through the slit, her back bare. At 42, she was a vision, powerful, alluring. This is crazy, she whispered. I'm dressing up for Jack. But she looked incredible. Taking a breath, she returned downstairs. Jack froze, breath catching. I knew it, he said, voice rough. You're stunning. She smiled, masking her nerves. Thank you, Jack. The dress is amazing. But his look, pure hunger, made her tremble. He led her to the table, pouring wine. Jazz played, candlelight dancing across his sharp features. They talked about Victor the years since, but Jack shifted gears. Elena, he said, voice low. How does a woman like you stay alone? I don't get it. She met his gaze, stunned. Loneliness isn't always a choice, Jack, she said. Life does that. He sipped his wine. But it doesn't have to stay that way, he said. You have desires. I'm here. His words rocked her. She sipped her wine, eyes locked on him. This wasn't just a birthday anymore. Jack set his glass down. Elena, you're so beautiful it drives me crazy. Tonight's for you, you deserve everything, he said, resolute. She twirled her glass, shy. Why all this effort? Because you're not just my stepmom, he said. You're everything I see, strong, gorgeous, and I can't pretend anymore. Her heart raced. Their eyes locked, tension pulsing. He stood, circled the table, and leaned close. You don't deserve to be overlooked, he said, a promise. Jack, she started, but words failed. He leaned in, breath scorching her lips. I can't hide this, he whispered. Then he kissed her. A fierce, consuming storm. His hands gripped her waist, pulling her against him, his heat overwhelming. She kissed back, swept into the chaos, their lips locked in raw need. Reason screamed. She pulled back, breathless. No, this is wrong, she gasped. I need to go. He exhaled hard. I'm sorry, Elena, but I couldn't hold it in, he said, voice still burning. She fled upstairs, slamming her door, collapsing on the bed. Her reflection showed swollen lips, wild eyes. What's happening? She whispered, wine and emotion dragging her to sleep. A soft noise woke her in the night. Her door creaked open, Jack's silhouette framed by the hallway light, tall, commanding. Elena, he whispered, stepping inside, closing the door. Her heart raced as he approached. I know I shouldn't be here, but I can't stop, he said. His eyes blazed, not a boy's but a man's, wild with want. Jack, we can't, she said, trembling. Her words crumbled as he neared, breath searing her skin. I don't care about right or wrong, he said. I want you. Her defenses fell. Jack, she whispered, giving in. He pulled her into him, their lips crashing, fierce, claiming. His hands gripped her waist, pressing her against his hard frame, his heat igniting her. She wrapped her arms around his neck, nails raking his back. He groaned, a sound that thrilled her. His pulse hammered under her hand on his chest. He lifted her, laying her on the bed with ease, stripping off his shirt. His bare torso glowed, broad shoulders, chiseled chest, flat stomach. Her breath quickened as he knelt over her. He leaned down, lips on her neck, hot and urgent, trailing fire across her skin. His hands tugged the silk straps off her shoulders, the dress slipping away. She lay exposed, his gaze devouring her, setting her alight. "Elena," he murmured, voice thick. "You're more beautiful than I dreamed." His hands gripped her waist, pulling her close. His lips moved lower, slow and deliberate, her body arching into him, pleasure surging. She clutched the sheets, lost in the heat of his touch. He pressed over her, his weight pinning her, every move a claim. Her nails dug into his back, drawing groans that drove her wild. Their bodies moved together, fierce and rhythmic, breaths tangling in desperate gasps. She surrendered to the waves, trembling in release, and he followed, their climax a shared blaze. Jack collapsed beside her, panting, arm around her. She lay spent, sweat gleaming, body humming. "Elena," he rasped, "I've never wanted anyone like you." She met his softened gaze. "Jack, what did we do?" He brushed her hair back, smiling faintly. "We lived for ourselves." She said nothing, just rested in his warmth, mind quiet, heart full. That night rewrote everything. After Victor, Elena had been a ghost, but Jack had brought her back. In the days after, he stayed near, his eyes now tender with intimacy. She didn't know what lay ahead. The lines were gone, the threshold crossed. But she felt alive again, and Jack was no longer the boy she'd known. He was the man who'd awakened her. The Miami sun rose, golden light flooding the villa. On the balcony, breeze in her hair, Jack slipped his arms around her waist. "Good morning," he whispered, breath warm. She leaned into him, smiling. "Good morning." They watched the waves, the world unaware of their storm. "What now?" she asked softly. He turned her to face him, eyes steady. "We figure it out together. No more hiding." She nodded, heart swelling with fear and hope. Together. As the sun climbed, bathing them in light, Elena knew she wasn't alone anymore.